Single arm and leg exercises can be great ways to finish off muscles at the end of a workout. All right, guys, I want to chat with you guys a little bit about this. And when I say this, I'm not saying that these make good primary exercises, because I am generally of the opinion our main movement should be big exercises, right? This is what we do our base building off of. And it doesn't mean they can't even be an isolation movement, because a big barbell curl, is still an isolation movement, for example. So when we do those big movements, this is where we're going to build most of our muscle, right? And they also make efficient use of our time, because doing these single arm and single leg exercises are quite frankly inefficient in terms of time. They take double the time per set to do. Again, there's also an additional amount of fatigue that can be associated with that. So a lot of times people say, oh, but they're easy on recovery. Well, maybe at the localized level if they're smaller movements. But in terms of just overall recovery, no, they can be taxing on the body, and it's something that we do need to be aware of. So I obviously don't recommend that we try to do this on every muscle for every set. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. So it's kind of one of these cases that I want to clarify this. That just because something is a good tool doesn't mean it's the only thing we should use. And I want to make that clear, because for some reason when you bring these things up, people do like to extrapolate it to the point. They're like, but you said this is a good tool, so I do it for everything I do. Okay? And I have people who will do that. And that is ridiculous. So what they are good for is finishers. Because one of the perks with a single arm or a single leg exercise is that it can be useful for correcting some muscle imbalances. Okay, now I don't always say dumbbells work that way, because people are like, well, it's even loading on each side. Yeah, but if you're doing both together, you can still shift and stuff to the side. So if you have bad habits on a barbell lift, and those bad habits have contributed to imbalance, trying to use dumbbells in both arms or both hands isn't necessarily going to fix that, because it's a form issue creating it. But in the case of having even mild isolateral or unilateral imbalances, it can be useful to take these sort of movements to finish off. So for example, watch when I do all of these, I like to always lead with the weak arm or the weak leg. So you'll notice I lead with my left side, because I think through this video I'm doing one-arm dumbbell rows, I'm doing one-arm laterals, and then one-arm preacher curls, and then you see me doing the leg extensions on my reverse hyper with one leg at a time. So when you look at these from a muscle balance perspective, after we have worked everything, we've used all of our big movements to efficiently build most of our musculature. When we come through to isolate things, these can be very, very helpful if we have one side that seems to be stronger than the other. And they're occasionally a good test to see how we're doing there, right? So in other words, they're occasionally useful as a tester to see if we have a strength imbalance occurring. And because if we can do, 10 clean reps on one side, right? So whatever the exercise is, if you can do 10 really clean reps, and then you're pretty much reaching failure, and then you can do the other side and you know that you can do more than 10, okay, then there's an issue there. There's an issue. It can be used to pinpoint and find some imbalances, particularly if we're stronger on the other side, the second side. Now, one thing to be aware of, though, these exercises do create overall fatigue. So occasionally, if you have good strength balance, good muscle balance on each side, sometimes doing the other side, you may be weaker on it. So in other words, if you hit failure on rep 12 on your left side, and then you go to do the right side, you might occasionally hit failure on rep 11. And that's not a case of an imbalance. It's because we have created fatigue with the first exercise, okay, the first set. Because really these are more than one set for the body. It really is an exercise in a set to just do one side. And there is going to be some fatigue that accumulates with that. So as you get deep into multiple sets, you will sometimes find that the other side, the performance will degrade quicker. But that's okay. Because if you already always lead with your non-dominant side, or your side you suspect is weaker, what's going to happen? It'll be okay, because it's still going to be hitting muscular failure. It's still going to be getting more of the work. Whereas in sometimes if the one we're doing second is failing immediately after, if we have decent balance, or even if we're slightly imbalanced, it can oftentimes fall a little short as we get further into multiple sets, just due to neurological. So maybe it's not going to grow as much. Okay, so the thing to think about here is if we have particularly been leading with our stronger side, right? See where we're going with this? What if on your pull-ups or your rows, you've been leading with the stronger side, biasing it slightly on the big movement? So the dominant, stronger side has done a little more work. It's already more fatigued. So it's not going to matter if it goes second. It's not going to matter if it loses a little bit, because it probably got slightly more work if you have a true imbalance. So again, doing the single arm or single leg exercise after and using the other to build it is a valid tool here, right? It's a valid tool because it will make sure that weaker side gets caught back up. Okay, because that weaker side might have a little more left in reserve also if the other side has been leading. The other side's gotten more fatigue through the work because it is stronger and your form shifted potentially to allow that. So if you find yourself compensating, right, on the bigger movements, particularly if you film it and see that compensation, again, a good sign that, well, maybe I should think about balancing these back out. Okay, and we can do these with a lot of different things. So even if we don't have all these machines, we can end up doing split squats. We can do split Romanian deadlifts. Right? We can do them on one leg. So, things like quads, things like hamstrings, they can all be trained in this manner, right? Just like our upper body can be with the dumbbells. Now, obviously, machines make it much, much easier, particularly lower body machines. So if you have access to those things, well, again, leg presses, leg extensions, leg curls, all those things can be done isolaterally. So that's an easy way to fix it. So again, it's just something to look at, and I do like the idea of doing this. If we can tell in our big movement that we have a dominant side, and we can see our form compensate when we get near failure, and we see that form compensation, we know they have that imbalance, it can be useful to come through at the end of the workout, right, and up here at the very end, or near the end, and come through and pick up one of these single-sided exercises, and then lead with the weak side and let it determine what reps you're going to do. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.